my favorite thing.
Hi there. Hello, my dears. Hello, my dears. Multiples. Hello, hello. So we're going to do some more Azov style. Hi, YouTuber me88. We're going to do some more Azov style press conference watching. Hi. Hi, Kay. Hi, audio producer. Good to see you. Hi, Praxis, and hi, Joe. So I'm going to do some more Azov style stuff on YouTube. And we're going to be watching the conference and kind of like doing some commentary and stuff like that. Thank you. Hi, Nastya. Oh, привет. Привет, привет. But so basically, if you want to see it better, it's going to be screen shared on YouTube. If you don't mind watching kind of like half screen or quarter screen, then you can stay on TikTok, because I'm going to play it quarter screen here. Then, Sin, where are you? What are you doing? Sinya. Hey, Sinny. Sing. Good. Sorry, I have a dog and she misbehaves quite often. But so yeah, if you don't mind seeing it like half screen or quarter screen, then that's what's going to be happening on TikTok. Slowed down Ukrainian alphabet on YouTube, but extremely slowed down Ukrainian alphabet. Well, one letter that I'll tell you should know right now is Y. It's an I with 2 dots, not 1. It does not exist in the Russian alphabet. It only exists in the Ukrainian and I believe maybe Belarusian alphabet. And so Ukraina has a letter Y in it. And so in Mariupol, in occupied Mariupol, there has been a new partisan movement, and they have been basically one sec, let me ask Vasil to do something. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry. So it's basically it's been a new movement in support of Ukraine and against the Russian occupation of Mariupol. They have been painting the letter Y on sidewalks, on buildings, everywhere, because it's a very good way to show that no, we're Ukraine. We want to be Ukraine, and we forever are going to be Ukraine. Not to mention that it really pisses off Russian invaders. Also, some incredible news coming out of Ukraine today. Thank you, Gap. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Some incredible news coming out of Ukraine today. Ukraine in 24 hours has liberated 40 kilometers of the territory of Ukraine from the Russian invasion, which is quite literally unheard of. Thank you, Kay. It's 1 second, sorry. Hello? You were what? Yeah, okay, 1 second. Sorry guys, let me just go open and I'll tell you more about it. 1 second. Sorry. Just give me one little tiny bit of second. Okay. Sorry, I'm back. All right. So, what I was trying to say is that there is a huge movement in Mariupol, and the letter Y is incredibly significant for this movement. Two is two. Hi, Chris. Two, not Grubhub, similar gorillas. Two, which is super important, is that Ukraine liberated 40 kilometers of Ukrainian territory that has been occupied by Russians within the past 24 hours alone. That is an incredible number, not just for the army of Ukraine, but for any army. That is quite unheard of. That is one of the strongest offensives that anyone has seen in a very long time. And no one expected that to happen. So today, the names of the settlements came out that Ukraine has liberated, and the list is staggering. Russian losses came out, and they're staggering. Ukraine took POW, a Russian colonel. Hi, Tacoma. Heroям Slava. A Russian colonel. Hi, Australia. Yeah. Oh, hi. Nice to. Hi, Pat. We took prisoner of war, a Russian colonel. There have been so incredibly many Russian soldiers that are POW. There are a lot of images that are circulating on Twitter that came out today. Today was like a news storm that came out today on Twitter. They're so graphic that I don't think you're going to find them anywhere else. Only Twitter allows things that are that graphic. And those are the images of just Russian losses and what's happening on the front lines in Kherson and on the front lines kind of all around the offensives. And it is mind-boggling. Honestly, the strength of this offensive is really it's incredible. It's quite incredible. I did retweet some. I did not retweet graphic stuff, at least not yet. I checked Twitter before I was running up here. I was running errands today right after I did the news live, so I wasn't home. I took Cindy to the dog park. So it's been like, I kind of didn't have time yet, but I will. Hi, Pamela, good to see you. But I will retweet them once I'm done with this, or maybe in the meanwhile, because, while we're watching this, I kind of have some empty hands. I do want to design a letter Y poster in support of Ukraine or in support of Mariupol. So I want to post that on Twitter as well, and I want to post that on Instagram. So, and I want to explain to people what letter Y means, because I hope that you guys, if you know what that looks like, I will draw it for you quite literally right now, because I want you to see what that letter looks like and how to recognize it. And I would like you to be able to kind of show your support to the people of Mariupol and to Ukraine as a whole by drawing that letter, well, wherever it is that you feel necessary. So, on posts about Mariupol or about Azovstal, it is quite a good idea to draw this, to post this in support. If you have Cyrillic keyboard, it's really easy to find. Hi, Scott. Hi, Jillian. Hi, Punk. And it is a letter Y. Well, it is high visibility. What do you mean? How is this not high visibility, James? Do you guys have trouble seeing this? Hi, Gabby. Yes, Cyrillic keyboard. So, yeah, so that's our letter Y. Okay, now let me set up my tripod, and with it, let me set up my phone so I can have the Azovstal live set up. 1 second. Letter Y, yes. The letter is called letter Y, and it's a letter in the Ukrainian alphabet that does not exist in the Russian alphabet. And obviously, this is a method of protest. So while we're going to be watching the Azovstal interviews, which we might watch a little more today, not just that one, because I do have a lot more time because it's only 10, not like midnight. So let me start the screen share. Chrome tab, and it's going to be, okay, live conference. So let me start. I think that I just kind of want to start it from where we left off yesterday, or a little earlier than what we left off yesterday, so you guys have an ability to see a little more of it, especially if you missed it yesterday. So now let me move this over. Yes, I am from Ukraine, and I talk about Ukraine, and I love Ukraine, and Ukraine is my country. Flip camera. Okay, good. Are we able to see everything? No, it's just I would put ye on posts about Mariupol, or I would put ye as like support of Ukraine, you know? Okay.
I would like to echo with my friend Wikipedia. I don't care about what I care are the lives of thousands of residents of Mariupol who were killed by the Russian soldiers. So, Dennis, the same two questions to you. The tragedy in Zelenivka was definitely the attempt to hide the signs of the beatings of the tortures so that nobody would know this and blame Ukraine, claiming that we that Ukraine destroyed this one barrack with HIMARS. I believe they are just trying to hide the signs of their crimes. As to Dugina's daughter again, I don't know who she is, and
also, let me just iterate it for someone, for people that just joined. This is Azovstal press conference. These are three Azov soldiers who were in Mariupol, then in Azovstal, then were prisoners of war in Russia, and then were exchanged onto the Ukrainian territory. All of them have been heavily injured, and they talk about their experiences. Part one is up on YouTube, on my Twitch, and on Twitter. Yeah, and on Twitter. And this is part two. And part two, because we just watched half of it yesterday and we were watching the other half today, just to give you a bit of an insight of what's happening here.
I don't know what they would use it for. Well, let me try and respond at length to your question. I'm convinced that even if they try to carry out so-called tribunal and they want to present it as a real-life tribunal, of course they will be using anything and everything. And back to what I said, Russia doesn't look for truth. Russia doesn't need to get any additional evidence because Russia, all it wants to present is the narrative that it has prepared long before it all happens. Look at what happens in the Russian courts of law. Their courts acquit less than 2% of those who are charged. And I'm talking not about war crime courts. I'm talking about ordinary civilian courts. So for Russia as the country, court hearing is always a show to blame a person and to prove that the person is guilty. Court trials are not about trying to find the truth. It's about presenting whatever evidence, including fakes that Russians have accumulated. And the goal for Russia is to blame our soldiers as a guilty party. That's why they will be coming up with some witness accounts, with some international observers. But who would be those witnesses? These would be unknown people who would be recorded, and Russia will claim that they were eyewitnesses. Also, there will be citizens of other countries um, who would be observing all that. So, thus, Russia would claim that this is an international trial. Uh, North Korea, Syria, Belarus, doesn't matter where they would come from. But on the other hand, they will claim that this is an international trial. Also, they will be using, well, any other facts like this alleged killing of Dugina's daughter. And it's not surprising that they already mentioned Azov regiment. And I wouldn't be surprised if they would be now beating and torturing some of my friends who are still imprisoned there, and they will sign statements that they know this lady with the name of Wolf, or they will be going through motions trying to uh, present this whole trial as a legitimate process. But they already have the sentence written down. All they need to do now is voice out good for nothing evidence, and that's what we will all observe. They would never have direct evidence. They would always use something that could not be double checked, but Russians will be treating it as a fact. So Russia will be using all available means to present the Ukrainian defenders as criminals. So, responding to any potential questions from you, yes, it's true, Russia will be using whatever they can. Daughters of Dugin, uh, Mariupol residents killed with bare hands by Azov style defenders, not only Azov regiment soldiers. But we all know that the shelling was perpetrated by enemies, tanks, artillery pieces, and planes. Dozens of thousands of Mariupol residents were murdered. And I know for this for a fact, we didn't have so much ammunition to perpetrate so much ruin in Mariupol, which we now can observe on the footage. But they will try to present this as something that the defenders of Azovstal perpetrated. We are uh, running out of time. Some of our soldiers will need to take additional painkillers. So, time for the last couple of questions. We can see the picture, we cannot. Espresso channel, Christina Yatsky. Did Russian treat Azov regiment soldiers differently from other defenders of Azovstal? And the second question, human rights international organizations, have you contacted you to collect evidence as to how Russians are violating Geneva Convention of treating prisoners of war? Dmitro, let's start with you now. Have the international human rights organizations contact you? No, all I am aware of is that Red Cross came to Novazovsk. I've seen their flags, that's all. Is there different treatment to Azov regiment soldiers or to other defenders, paratroopers or national guards officers, security service Ukraine officers? Well, I've been in Donetsk hospital number 15, so I haven't observed it there. Dennis, what about you? Yeah, there was a difference in treatment. As soon as they hear that you're from Azov regiment, especially that you were fighting in a tank, then they will interrogate you more, trying to use this for propaganda reasons. Even when they would interrogate National Guards officers or paratroopers, they would ask them, "Have you witnessed that Azov regiment soldiers were blowing up civilian houses?" No, they only responded that we were helping the civilians, handing out water and food to them. Vladislav? Yeah, the treatment was different depending on whether you were a soldier of any other uh, services and units but Azov regiment. They were acutely interested in Azov regiment soldiers. They would spend more time interrogating us, asking more questions about our commanders, probably because they try to depict us as criminals. Well, of course, uh, painting this picture in the mind's eye of their own population. Also, they would ask us provocative questions like, well, the question was not like, have you seen who shot the civilians? The question would be, why did you shoot the civilians? So the way they formulate the question does not allow me to respond that it was not me. They are asking straight away, why did you do this? And my response to you would be, our job was to defend the city. And even when we were encircled at Azov style steelworks, we were still taking care of the civilians who were staying there. And let me reiterate once again, it was tough for me to lose some of my brothers in arms, but what's even worse, the deaths of dozens and hundreds of thousands of civilians all across Ukraine, not only in Mariupol, from the hands of the enemy that tries now to blame us on those deaths of the civilians. So I'm 100% confident that they would be trying to make the same allegations at this mock trial. Well, all those evidence and statements, have they been documented by the international human rights organizations like Red Cross or Amnesty International? No. I Not a single international organization interviewed me. The only authority that collected information about the conditions of treatment of the prisoners of war, that was the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU. They were the ones who were gathering such evidence from us. And I would like to echo what my uh, brothers in arms said. I haven't seen a single Red Cross or uh, Amnesty International people in Alenivka or in the places where we were in prison. But they might have come there in the first couple of days when I was still unconscious. Uh, but no, we are in information vacuum now. We are of no interest to them for some reason. When we were evacuated on the 17th, Red Cross people would stop into our bus, hand out leaflets, and they would ask us, whom do you want us to learn that you're still alive? Military command or relatives? So, what did they ask you? They asked us, what's your name? Uh, Date of birth, and who do you want to be informed, relatives or the government of Ukraine? So they only documented the fact that you were imprisoned, but no further exposure to international organizations. No, none. Uh, like I learned later when I was back to Ukraine, I was told that Red Cross monitors our stay as prisoners of war, but no international observers have access to the place I was kept in. So how could they possibly claim what were the conditions of our um, treatment there if there is no access to Alenivka or to the hospital where I stayed as the prisoner of war? One of the important reasons why I care so much for my friends is only because nobody knows what's happening to them. Only the enemies would know. Even if they are exposed to torture as we speak, Red Cross, Amnesty International, nobody has access there right now. Thus, they cannot claim whether the conditions of stay there are normal or subhuman. Uh, as is that, colleagues? Next question. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes, loud and clear. Artem Bonder, Wall Street Journal. Guys, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice for the sake of Ukraine. Unfortunately, what happened in Azovstal is no longer the priority, and that's why some of the journalists ask you about Dugin's daughter. But let me ask you two questions. Firstly, while you were fighting in the streets of Mariupol, have you seen with your own eyes that the Russian troops were terrorizing the civilians, shelling them, shooting at the cars, robbing the apartments? And my second question would be, while being imprisoned, either in prison or in prison hospital, how many brothers in arms disappeared? They will take them out of the cell and then either would not be brought back and disappear or would be brought back with some uh, signs of torture. Yeah. Have I seen with my own eyes that the enemy kept violating humanitarian laws and the fact that the enemy harmed not only the prisoners but civilians in the streets of Mariupol? Yeah, I've seen the enemy destroy not families, not standalone house, but the whole neighborhoods. I've seen shellings when the whole neighborhood would be destroyed in one barrage, and I have pictures and recordings of what was happening in Mariupol. You can see burned out buildings, and you should recognize that it still had some residents still in there. You mentioned shootings at cars. Well, of course, the Russians themselves share the evidence of robbing the apartments uh, of local residents. They uh, take videos using cell phones stolen from the local residents. And I have uh, recordings that prove that dozens of thousands of civilians were killed in Mariupol. Even a single murdered person is a tragedy, but in Mariupol, the whole families, the whole neighborhoods were murdered. So, of course, it's a clear lie that whatever residents of Mariupol that are left there would make a statement that they are so glad to be liberated by the Russians. Well, every single person who is still um, stays in the territories that are temporarily occupied, they are aware of their relatives who were killed or disappeared. So if you look at the recordings and the pictures of the whole buildings, well, not even buildings, the whole neighborhoods, blocks of flats destroyed. So now the enemy claims that they are all um, lost in action. Also, please do not forget about those uh, uh, crematoria that they brought to Mariupol. So basically, if the Russians claim that some Mariupol residents disappeared, that is definitely that they were killed, murdered, and then destroyed in the crematoria. Well, yes, I was an eyewitness of their tanks shooting at the residential buildings, and that was happening all the time, shooting at the uh, buildings, residential buildings with civilians living there. I've seen a family trying to cross the street, and the Russians used heavy machine gun. They wounded a child into the leg, and we provided first aid to that child. As to your second question, yes, there were brothers in arms that were taken from our cell, and they would not be brought back. Well, another case, in 2 days' time, one of our soldiers was brought back, but his legs were broken, his ribs were broken, he couldn't possibly swallow uh, food, and he told us that they were beating on him uh, because he refused to sign any mock statements. But I'm not aware of what happened to him afterwards. Dmitry, what would you say about this? As to Mariupol, I've seen hundreds of corpses lying on the streets of Mariupol, and they were civilians. As to the second question, well, back in Novazovsk, I'm aware of one guy who was taken out and then shot dead. Well, in Mariupol, those paratroopers who were brought back couldn't recognize the city. Yes, I couldn't recognize it when I flew in there by on helicopter. It was almost like a horror house. Shell-shocked children. It was a sore sight to my eyes, especially everything to do with children. Would you like to add something? Yes, in respect of Mariupol, what my brother in arms said that he couldn't recognize the city, and that's true. Just uh, one thing is to see it on pictures, but try to imagine it happening to your hometown, and just imagine that all of the windows are shattered and glass is everywhere on the streets, under your feet. All the wires are on the ground because all the lampposts are down. There are chunks of uh, houses taken out, while other buildings were turned into rubble, and you never know whether there's still civilians in the basement because the building uh, is now lies as a rubble on top of it. Some of the residents tried to get evacuated from Mariupol to Zaporizhia, and two of my friends uh, succeeded to leave the city on the third attempt, and the residents could only already recognize the sound of shelling. They could even recognize the caliber of the round flying in. And we're talking about the civilians with no military training, but the shelling was so dramatic that they learned this the hard way. And now imagine the columns of people on foot trying to flee the city under shelling that would never stop. So I could not blame people who decided to flee towards Rostov, towards Russian territory. How can I blame people who try to survive under constant shelling? Uh, the civilians, the non-combatants, in order to survive, could give fake uh, evidence just to survive. As to your second question, uh, at the time I was wounded, and my second serious uh, uh, injury happened in the night before the vacation, and my subordinate was in a safe place. And right after I was wounded, I talked to him over the radio, but only recently I learned that his name was found on the list of killed in action. So I'm very much afraid that he was murdered while being a prisoner of war, because by the at the time when I talked to him, he was in the safe place and there was no shelling because we were ready to get evacuated. As his commander, I can only hope that by accident his name was put on the list of killed in action. But again, after Alenivka, I'm getting myself ready to the worst. Could they create the situation in Alenivka as the way to psychologically pressure the other prisoners of war? Yes, it's not even my guess; it's a fact. All weekly, if not daily, we would be told while staying in the prison that these were Ukrainian troops that hit Alenivka. Well, I knew that that was so. They were telling you that Alenivka was shelled even before it happened. Yes, uh, we were told even before Alenivka happened that when they said to us, "Well, look, Ukraine doesn't need you." That's why they even shelled Alenivka, and it happened before the actual shelling happened. Anastasia Chkalova, Vikna STB. First of all, I would like to thank you for your courage. Thank you for your service. So you've been cut off from information. You were left in vacuum. You were under constant pressure and torture. So what helped you to withstand all this disinformation? What do you believe worked in your favor not to cave in? Thank you for your question. Mitra, let's start with you. Yeah, thank you. Well, we believed in our country. We believed in our armed forces. Being Ukrainians, we always believe in Ukraine. Dennis, what about you? What helped you withstand all that? Knowing Russia, that they always lie, I just never trusted them. I only trust the armed forces of Ukraine, and that we will keep fighting. We'll keep defending our cities. Russians would never be able to capture our cities. So it was the faith in our country and brothers and laws. What about you, Vladislav? I couldn't allow myself to trust the enemy because while we had internet over Starlink and Azovstal Steelworks, I was reading what they were writing about us, and I haven't seen a single truthful news. So being imprisoned, being cut off from information, with no ability to double check what they tell us, well, of course, I would treat everything that they would tell me as a blatant lie, and it's then proved to be the case. After I was released, that's what I learned. They were lying to me. As to what helped me, well, I stay calm because I know I did what I could and I will keep doing what I can uh, to keep fighting for our country. Do what you can. Try to find where you can be helpful. Uh, Commit yourselves, and then you'll sleep tight, and your consciousness would be calm, and you would know that you're contributing to one common goal. And our goal is to become victorious. They planned to defeat us in 2 weeks' time, and it's almost 6 months now. Please help to speed up our victory. People often enough ask me uh, how long the war would last. Well, if we keep fighting, the victory will come as soon as possible. Kiev Post, your last question. We can see you. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Welcome, glory to Ukraine. Thank you for being indomitable. I'm Roman Revitchuk. I'm under international protection now. I would like to ask you, is it true what we heard that where you stayed you had food supplies for more than 6 months? Because while you were fighting the Russians, you can seize the ammunition and weapons, meaning that you can stay there for 6 more months. Why I'm asking you this? Uh, there is information that you were uh, lied to and you were made prisoners of war in exchange of grain supplies. Well, quite an exotic question indeed. If my brothers-in-law would agree, let me try and handle this question. Well, I've been until the last night at Azov Steel Steelworks. Well, weapons and ammunition is what we lacked the most. Like people ask us, probably water or food. No, 120 millimeter mines. That's what we missed. Weapons and ammunition. I'll get back to your other question, just for you to understand how bad it was, and so that other military who would hear me will recognize this. In the last couple of months, the mortar unit had 5 mines left of different caliber. Well, any military person will recognize 5 mines. You might not even hit one target with 5 of them. So it was not about incurring losses on the enemy, it's just scaring them slightly. Well, as to food and water, there was lots of water in Azovstal. That's true. But there was lots of water in one place and virtually half a liter a day per person in another place. But in order to bring it from the place where you have water, you would have to cross 1 kilometer of uh, under direct shooting and shelling. And we're talking about ruins. There were no uh, buildings to go through. You had to crawl on top of the ruins. I can only remember a couple of hours when Azovstal was not shelled at. That's when the civilians were successfully taken out. All the other time, it was under constant shelling. Uh, I've seen soldiers, defenders of Azovstal, who were hit when they were trying to walk out. All the underground communications were completely ruined. 24/7, heavy artillery shelling, airstrikes all the time with heavy bombs. Lots of people died being covered by rubble underground, or when they try to move from one place to another. Yeah, there might be a stockpile of food someplace, but even if it was somewhere, but in order to bring it to where it was needed, well, it was virtually impossible. Let me illustrate it with one example. A medical bunker where some still alive medics from Mariupol hospital were left there. So uh, the code name of this medical bunker was Железяка, the iron thing. So it was the bunker where we kept heavily wounded soldiers, and there the food ratio was one porridge a day with one piece of lard. That's how much they could eat. But this glass would probably even be more than the size of porridge that they will get a day, and that's for heavily wounded persons. You need to bring it daily from another bunker, and the distance was 730 or 600 or 730 meters, uh, but still more than half a kilometer. So soldiers from another bunker would have to bring this food there, and sometimes they might fail. I heard at least one soldier killed in an attempt to bring food, and four others wounded, at least four others. So uh, food stockpiles for 6 months could be, but no ability to get access to it. I personally hasn't seen lots of food there, like a glass of porridge a day, and where I stayed, it was one plate a day. Thank you. Thank you, esteemed friends. I would like to thank you for the interest to the defenders of Azovstal. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service, for withstanding this all with courage and dignity. I wish you fast recovery. So, dear friends, in conclusion, I would like to repeat, all our soldiers are ready to be eyewitnesses at any international war crimes trial that would happen after our victory. But what might or might not happen in Mariupol in the upcoming days, it has nothing to do to justice. It has nothing to do to proper court trials, because what we would observe are proper military tribunal of Russia, and at that tribunal, every Azov regiment soldier who survived the hell would provide evidence of tortures, of uh, inhumane treatments. Each and every one of them who survived have such stories, and of course, they're ready to be eyewitnesses. Thank you.
Huh. Hi. These are the guys who served in the front lines of Mariupol, who defended Azovstal, the very notorious steelworks plant.
І на наступний день ми поїхали ще в будівлю
Oh my
ВНП,
gosh, what's
і
up?
туди прилетіли ракети. Дві. І саме тоді ми всі тут завалили нас.
All right. Sorry for that. I forgot that I had YouTube on and it switched to the next video. So basically, what I was trying to say is that these guys are incredibly heroic guys, and they did something that was pretty much considered impossible by the leading militaries of the world. The United States military does not understand how they've stayed as of and protected the steelworks plant. with the civilians in it for as long as they did. The British military does not understand it either. Leading world militaries are quite literally studying them and what they did in order to understand how that had happened. All of these guys voluntarily stayed there. All of these guys voluntarily went to defend Mariupol, knowing that it would be a tough game because they knew that Mariupol is going to be easily encircled. They knew there was that huge possibility. Most of them said that after day probably 8 of what was happening in Mariupol, they understood that deblocking Mariupol was impossible. When they came to Azovstal, a lot of them, these are just 3 guys, a lot of them volunteered to be dropped in to Azovstal to bring in ammunition. And they knew that it was a ticket. It was a one-way ticket. They knew they weren't going to come back, right? Most of them knew they were not going to come back. Yet they went there because they knew their country needed them and their brothers in arms needed them. And I think heroism of these guys, the sheer preparation of these guys is incredible. Another thing that I want to point out, that when they were in Mariupol and when they were in Azovstal even, they were dealing with artillery. They were dealing with artillery shells from tanks, from armored vehicles, from a military that outnumbered them more than 10-1. And they held on. And they threw themselves in battle. And not just threw themselves in battle, they strategically defended the city. One of the most interesting things that I've learned by watching so many interviews with the defenders of Mariupol is that a lot of them say, when asked about Russian strategy, they all say, oh no, Russia has no strategy. And they were explaining how Russian soldiers were attacking them, what they were using, what they were doing, and how from a military standpoint, that is incredibly unprepared. And it's crazy to me that guys who were outnumbered, probably panicking, right, had better military strategy than a unit than units, like 40,000 Russian soldiers that were sent onto Mariupol. Let me explain. So it was about 6,000 Azov fighters in Mariupol and about 40,000 Russians who were there. And none of them had any strategy. And these 6,000 guys withheld them for so long. To me, it's one of the most incredible military tactics and one of the most incredible defenses of a single city that we have seen in modern history. Quite incredible. There is really not much more to say about it. It's just, it's incredible. I want to look up, I'm going to go into Azov Media and see if there were more interviews done recently, because I've seen most of them. But most of their interviews are translated into English, so, or at least have subtitles in English. So I'd like to show them to you. Oh my gosh, thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much. Or at least they have each subtitle. So I really want to show them to you so you guys could see some more interviews with them. I don't know why there are only certain ones that are translated. So let me see. Azov Battalion interview. Let me see. Okay. Oh, what do you mean connection to the internet? Okay. There were supposed to be, so we watched. The interesting thing is, you know, there is such a lack of English speaking information about these guys. Also, here is a thing. For contrast, I want to show you a video that has 1.8 million views that's called Inside a White Supremacist Militia in Ukraine. And it was a year ago, published by The Time. And they were talking about the Azov battalion. So actually, I've never seen this before, but I can imagine quite a spectacle that was. So how about we watch it all together now and see, with everything that we know now, what you would have thought about Azov had you seen this a year ago. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, Grumpy. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to put it over here as well. Hate watching, but okay, well, this is not necessarily hate watching. I'm actually very curious as to what they were saying and how they were portraying them as white supremacists. Like, I'm curious to know what they were saying, and I'm curious to know how they were portraying them, right? So here is something, and this is kind of like to show you the contrast, right? Let's see. So we just heard these men speak about their accomplishments, being incredibly humble about it too. Let's see how Time Magazine's YouTube channel portrayed them a year ago. Genuinely want to know.
Knows how to spell Mississippi. Doesn't know. Sheep.
It seemed like an odd way to spend a Saturday. Watching the blood sports at a festival for far-right extremists. Even the summer of 2019, had gone to Ukraine to learn more about those groups. And the crowds one thing seemed pretty clear about it. They weren't bothered by this event organized by Azov, a far-right group increasingly linked to violence around the world.
Vishnya is linked to a 74-page manifesto filled with white supremacist rhetoric.
FBI agents say President Biden traveled to Ukraine to fight the right military.
At least one member of American hate also trained in Ukraine with Azov Captivity.
Oh my God.
According to the FBI, domestic terrorists killed 39 people in fiscal year 2019, making it the most deadly year for domestic terrorism since the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing.
The threat of white nationalism has evolved since Oklahoma City, where a domestic terrorist used a truck bomb to kill at least 168 people. Police don't tend to see such terrorists as lone wolves acting in isolation anymore. It's become clear to law enforcement that these attackers often have links to a global network, one with common goals and a shared ideology.
We are looking very hard at white supremacists or neo-Nazis here, connecting through social media online with like-minded individuals overseas, and in some cases actually traveling overseas to train.
Over the last few years, experts in violent extremism have grown especially alarmed about the Azov movement. The group emerged from the revolution that swept across Ukraine in 2014, and it has gotten a lot stronger amid the ongoing war with pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. The fighting in that region has become kind of ideal breeding ground for militias like Azov. At their public events, one thing that surprised me was how many Ukrainians tend to see Azov not as militants or extremists, but as war heroes. In Kiev, the capital, I watched an Independence Day parade where veterans of the Azov battalion marched alongside other volunteer militias, surrounded by cheering crowds who thanked them for defending Ukraine against Russia. But even at the march were signs of the far ideology that's so common at Azov. The symbols on their flags have been especially controversial. Azov says it combines the letters I and N for idea of nation, but extremism experts see it as an emblem of Nazism.
The official symbol of Azov, it's a version of Volksangel. It was one of the symbols of one of SS division during the World War II. It is one of more or less usual symbols for neo-Nazi groups all over the world.
And it's not just about their symbols. When it was founded in 2014, Azov drew many of its commanders and recruits from Ukraine's most notorious far-right groups, including outright neo-Nazis.
We basically recruited everyone who could hold weapons in their hand when Ukrainian state was paralyzed and the defense of Ukrainian state was totally in the hand of Ukrainian volunteers. So there were many war adventurers, guys who believed that they are on kind of ideological tour to save maybe the future of the West and so on and so forth. So
the future of the white race.
Or yes.
Azov's paramilitary wing is now a major fighting force, with its own bases and training grounds near
Oh, sorry. I was saying that, it's so funny to me how these guys are portrayed as like, they're like, oh my gosh, the signs of the far right militia are so evident here, because when we look at the parade and we see these people, all of the Ukrainians see them as war heroes defending them from Russia, not a far right militia. And then they show a photo, and then they show a video, quite literally probably not understanding what the heck it means, of literally Azov standing there and saluting glory to Ukraine. Hilarious. Yeah, we see them as heroes that defended us in the war with Russia because they are. And they were the only ones trained to do so at that time. And now they're the most trained battalion in our military. I'm like, this makes me want to... Oh, I don't even know. And this makes me want to, like... And the worst part is that this is still up and they did not take it down, yet they know it's not true. At this point in time, most of the world knows this is not true. And the fact that it's still up and it's still gaining views and it's still serving to discredit Azov, after you watch that interview with these guys. Also, like, one of the things that really bothers me is the fascination with their symbols, right? They could have had anything on their patches. As long, like, it's not right? Like, if they had some crazy symbols on their patches, it's not right. But they could have had anything on their patches. If they don't apply to that ideology, if they have never done anything to show that they apply to that ideology, and if they quite literally only do things that benefit the humanity, not vice versa, then shut up about these patches. I'm so tired of hearing about their patches. First of all, it's an ancient symbol that existed way before Wolfsangel did. Way before. Dates back to like 300s, if not earlier. Idea of nations, not Wolfsangel. And if Germany in 1940s was inspired by that symbol and took that, then that is a Germany problem. It's the same as, like, if you go to Japan, Japan is full of swastikas because in Japan that is a symbol of spirituality. You're not going to go to Japan and be like, hey, Hitler stole this from you. He used it to signify his terrible doing. So you take that out, even though you're the original owners, and you just and you replace it with something else. So stop doing that to Azov. God, so annoying.
The front lines of war against the pro-Russian forces. After the Veterans Parade in Kiev, I interviewed Andrei Beletsky, who founded the Azov movement in 2014.
Воинское братство — это люди, которые не просто служили вместе, проливали кровь, переживали гибель товарищей, сладость, обед, охрана общественного порядка на улице. Мы создаем отряды самообороны, которые помогают поддерживать порядок на улице.
Azov's leaders also tried to break into politics. They failed to win any seats in parliament during the most recent elections in 2019, but their plans in Ukraine are ambitious.
Сьогодні ми відпочиваємо, але навіть відпочиваючи, ми пропагуємо наші нові українські цінності. Бути сильними і сміливими, бути єдиними і відчувати братерство своєї нації.
What worries officials in the West is Azov's recruitment strategy. It's tried hard to build friendships with far-right groups around the world, especially in the US and Europe. During my visit in 2019, I spent a day at one of the biggest recruitment events in Azov's history. Thousands of people showed up for a day of fighting sports and blatant propaganda. There were neo-Nazi symbols, tattoos, and posters all over the place. And many in the crowd seemed pretty receptive to Azov's far-right ideology.
Бути толерантним про-ЛГБТшникам – це неприродне. Для цього треба людині промити мозки. Поважати своїх батьків, любити своїх дітей, пишатися за свою країну – це нормально.
Events like this also tend to attract recruits from abroad. One of the ones I met was named Robin, who had just arrived in Ukraine from Sweden, where he told me he's wanted for hate crimes.
This is hard to explain the surroundings for someone who's watching this, you know. It's surreal. It's like, I don't know, it's like something you read about the great Germany before, you know, in the 1920s. It's a revival of the Indo-European soul. Mm-hmm. And it's all happening here.
Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting about this whole mute thing. This is not meant to look like Germany. This is meant to look like Cossack events. This is meant to look like Siege. This is not meant to look like the great Germany of 1920s. If this stuff attracts some crazy people from abroad, that does not mean that that's the crowd that Azov is trying to attract. Also, what can I bet you to that this interviewer was approaching every single craziest looking person with the most like sketchy tattoos, asking them why they're here? Because this is trying to sell a story. This is trying to paint them a certain way. And they're trying to show the fire, and they're trying to show all of these like crazy rituals. They took out like one of the guys who was like talking about anti-LGBTQIA, which yeah, we have a few of those in Ukraine, and we don't support that. But also, like, this interview was published in 2019, yet he was talking about when he was there in 2014, and specifically when he interviewed Beletsky, who was one of the founders, who was like, he's not there anymore. So it's very interesting to me how they use very like specific singular instances specifically to paint a narrative. Disgusting. And shameful that they still have it up. Shameful.
In Ukraine, afterward, we rode back to the Azov base in northern Kyiv, where Azov commanders had allowed Robin to stay as a potential recruit.
There are areas, and we're realizing it. That's a way of...
Meet the brand new Subi 3.0. The newest magical all-in-one countertop kitchen robot. Designed to save
life, you know. And after the war in Germany, we went back to the benches.
Who's involved in politics?
But now we will rise again.
Azov is not involved in politics.
Are they neo-Nazis as an organization? No. Have they had neo-Nazis as an organization? I would say look at the US Army, you would find neo-Nazis as well.
Dave is an American expat and US military veteran who's volunteered to help Ukraine's National Guard. And he's met a lot of the recruits who'd come to join Azov.
You only need one of these guys to kind of go home and commit an act of terrorism to then really damage the reputation of Ukraine in the eyes of the world, right? So that's a risk that Ukraine faces. I think they're taking it seriously enough.
No, yes.
A few weeks later, Robin, the Swede I met at that festival, wrote me that he was going to the front lines to join the fight. With recruits like this, it's little wonder that US officials see Azov as a threat. Experts point out that the pace of white supremacist terrorism has intensified, with new incidents frequently filling the headlines. 22 gunned down at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, 2 killed near a synagogue in Halle, Germany, 9 more in an attack on 2 shisha bars near Frankfurt, and a series of arrests exposing far-right terror plots across the US and Europe. One tally reported an increase of 320% in such attacks in Western countries between 2014 and 2019.
Я знаю, я вірю, я переконаний, що ми готові до боротьби, що ми готові бути сміливими і сильними, що ми готові перемагати. Бо за нами Україна, а перед нами наша остаточна велика перемога. Слава Україні! Героям слава! Слава нації! Смерть ворогам! Україна! Україна!
This is hilarious to me because did you notice how this is not my ad, socialist. I don't run ads. This is an ad on the Times page where this was. Yes, please try to discredit me in every way possible. Even if I made money from ads, that would be acceptable because I spent all of my time thinking of of content and filming content and editing content and researching stuff. So anyways, here's the thing. Have you noticed how not a single member of the Azov regiment was interviewed on their beliefs? Have you noticed how not a single Azov person actually commented on neo-Nazi ideology or expressed any neo-Nazi ideology or Nazi ideology? It was all like random foreigner recruits, or I have heard that Azov has reached out to organizations. They've spent most of their time reaching out to organizations around the world that are neo-Nazi organizations. No proof. No proof. No proof. Not a single Azov member was interviewed. They were like, oh yeah, this neo-Nazi guy was accepted to Azov and was going to fight in the front lines. Do you think they knew? Do you think he came in and he was like, yes, so I'm a neo-Nazi and white supremacist. Hello, please recruit me. He literally came in and was like, I want to fight for your country. And then they saw his combat skills. What? Like, sometimes, not sometimes, but these things quite literally drive me crazy. Because it's such a misrepresentation of what Azov is, and the length to which these publications, these news publications have been going to make that happen are astonishing to me. Yeah, they found a guy who fit the narrative. Well, no, there was like a thing, James, where they said, oh, he texted me and he said he was going to the front lines. Though, like, the guy could have lied. Have you ever checked for him actually being accepted? Like, what? What kind of journalism is that? there was a lot of talk and very little proof, and all I kept seeing them showing is Ukrainian military saluting glory to Ukraine, and like a Cossack inspired event. What? Also, what Germany in 1920s? What Germany in 1920s had siege? Anyways, I'm going to turn off YouTube and I'm going to, hi Amanda, thank you. I'm going to turn off YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I hope that the Azov interviews, and I hope that this, I am going to stay on TikTok though. I hope that this was helpful for you guys, and I hope that it really gave you a perspective into what Azov is versus what international media has tirelessly been trying to portray it as for the past 8 years. So I really incredibly, it's to me, you know, I try not to watch things that try to portray Azov as like some crazy militia, because it's painful. It's just plain painful. They're heroes. They're war heroes. They're brave, invincible war heroes that for the past 8 years have been tirelessly portrayed in the media as neo-Nazis with a very carefully crafted narrative with zero proof to it. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you guys here tomorrow for the news. For now, I'm gonna go, and I'll stay I will stay on TikTok. Bye guys. До свидания. To the one person in my comments who speaks Russian.